The Astra-Vigilant drifted through the Stygian stretch between Lyra's home system and Celastaris Prime, her portside engines humming with barely contained power. Even at warp's edge, the sheer scale of the vessel was awe-inspiring. 2 kilometers of reinforced alloy hull, sinewy pylons arching toward twin quantum cores, and an array of sensor dishes like the shimmering petals of a metallic flower. Yet it was the bridge that felt alive, a living organism of men and women huddled around holoprojectors, each heartbeat amplified by the knowledge that the fate of billions hung in the balance. Lyra Voss stood at the command console, her fingers dancing across translucent controls that shifted with the faintest pressure. A cascade of incoming transmissions flooded the display. Tactical updates, encrypted status reports from colony governors, even desperate pleas from civilian freighters begging for safe passage. None of it mattered. All eyes were fixed on the Council's ultimatum. For hours earlier, the Vigilant had received this single, unyielding message: Galactic Council High Chamber 2, Free Colonies Combined Fleet Surrender. All non-standard armaments and classified defensive technologies within 24 standard hours. Failure to comply will result in overwhelming force. No caveats, no negotiation, no hope. Lyra replayed the message in her mind as she turned to her first officer, Commander Tariq Hawk El-Amin. Hawk was a veteran of the Purge Wars too. Decades ago, he'd commanded guerrilla raiding parties on the mineral world of Dawn's Fjord, fighting to keep colonists alive against devourer hives. His lean frame and hawk-sharp gaze bespoke unyielding resolve, tempered by a lifetime of losses. Well, she said softly. Hawk's voice, when it came, was calm but carries an unmistakable edge. They know we can't comply. The Hyperion Matrix alone would take weeks to decommission safely. Without it, every colony along the outer ring is exposed. It's a trap, Captain. Lyra clenched her jaw. She could feel the Council's words pressing against her like a vice. Once allies, the High Chamber's demand now reeked of treachery. They had supplied the free colonies with the Matrix years ago, citing its success in repelling the Devourers. Now they wanted it back under threat of annihilation. Behind her, Lieutenant Ilamaro, the ship's communications officer, seized Lyra's attention. Incoming from Admiral Sran, she announced, voice modulated to steel. The view screen rippled, resolving into the stern visage of Admiral Garrick Sran, his uniform bedecked with the gilded stars of a full admiral. Lines of age etched his face, but his eyes burned with the same fanatic intensity Lyra remembered from the Academy, unwavering. Loyalty to Council doctrine. Captain Voss, Sran began, his tone all formality. You are commanded to present the Astra-Vigilant and her sister ships for disarmament procedures upon arrival at Saturn's ring station. Failure to comply will be considered an act of rebellion. A pause. The Council is prepared to enforce its will. He cut transmission abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. A single red dot marked Saturn's ring station on the holomap, an orbital platform bristling with missile turrets and railguns, the staging ground for the Council's so-called peacekeeping forces. Muriel Hanford, chief engineer and the soul of the ship's heart, slammed a gauntleted fist on the console. They've lost their minds, she growled. Sparks danced along her cybernetic arm. You want to talk rebellion, Admiral? Try calling it that while slicing the Republic in half. Lieutenant Commander Santi Malikov, head of intelligence, leaned forward. His fingers traced the arcs of the Matrix's energy signature on the display. It's more than just a trap, he said. Our sensors have detected unusual shipments docked at Black Sun Consortium yards. Bio-warheads, quantum destabilizers, things the Council officially banned 2 cycles ago. Lyra's pulse quickened. Black Sun was the consortium whispered about in hushed tones across backwater cantinas, rumored to traffic in doomsday weapons, feeding conflict wherever profits brewed. If Malikov's intel was correct, the Council might be in league with the very criminals they claim to police. Assume worst-case scenario, Lyra ordered. Sound general quarters. Prepare defensive barricades and ready the boarding parties. Notify all colony governors. If we don't report disarmament in 12 hours, consider us at war. Her words rang through the bridge, hard and unflinching. The crew snapped into motion, a choreographed ballet of duty and dread. At her side, Hawk keyed the comm. All ships, this is Vanguard Command. Disarm or engage. Our threshold is 12 hours. I repeat, 12 hours. Outside, the celestial panorama of stars and nebulae gave no hint of the storm brewing in political capitals. Yet the vacuum of space felt suddenly charged, as if the cosmos itself recoiled in anticipation of the coming reckoning. Lyra turned away from the view screen and strode to the strategy table. At the center of the bridge, holostar maps floated. Above its surface, plotting the boundary lines of Council space and the Free Colony's territories. Red symbols marked Council warships and defense platforms. Blue icons denoted Loyalist vessels under her command. "All right," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "What assets can we muster within 20 hours? Muriel consulted the engineering feeds. "We have to Nova-class fighters and 6 grav jets out of repair. I can hot-swap core components from the shuttle fleet, but it'll take us at least 6 hours to run diagnostics." Santi's brow furrowed. "And we'll need to re-encrypt our sensor rays. We can't broadcast our movements if we hope to keep the grav jets cloaked." Hawk added, "It's not just firepower. We'll need a diplomatic gambit, something to stall the Council while we buy time to mobilize the colonies." Lyra nodded, thinking of Celine Auris, the Council ambassadrix she had briefly met at a summit in Alara Station. Celine's reputation for impartiality had been unassailable. Perhaps she could broker a delay if indeed the ultimatum was being twisted by darker forces. But asking for a parley felt like handing leverage back to an enemy that had already shown its hand. Open a secure channel to Auris, Lyra decided. Tell her Captain Voss requests a formal audience to discuss compliance specifics. Frame it as a goodwill gesture. We stall them, and we see exactly how far the Council's machinations run. Lieutenant Morrow's fingers flew over the console. Channel open, a flicker. Then Celine's face pale under Council-grade lighting, eyes wide with shock. "Captain Voss, this is unexpected." Lyra offered a curt nod. "Ambassadrix, I trust you received the Council's ultimatum." Celine's lips tightened. "Yes, 24 hours to surrender the Hyperion Matrix or be destroyed. It's unprecedented." Lyra inhaled. "Then you understand our concerns. We cannot dismantle the Matrix without endangering every world we protect. I ask you, in good faith, to intercede with the High Chamber, delay the deadline until we can present an alternative solution." Celine hesitated, glancing off-screen. "I will relay your request, but the Council has convened an emergency session. They're not inclined to listen." Lyra pressed on. "The colonies will comply if given a reasonable timeline. We seek only to ensure the safety of Inuk. Ents, help us prevent bloodshed." For a moment, silence. Then Celine's dark eyes met Lyra's. "All right, I'll try. But Captain, there are things you don't know. Watch your 6." The hololink severed, leaving the bridge in half-light. "Watch our 6, Hawk murmured. "What the hell does that mean?" Lyra leaned back, her mind a whirlwind of possibilities. If Celine hinted at internal Council dissent, then the ultimatum could be the thin edge of a much broader conspiracy. At stake was not only the Free Colony's freedom, but the legitimacy of the Council itself. She straightened, resolve crystallizing. "They doubt us," she said quietly. "They think we'll knuckle under. They underestimate our will, our unity. Let them doubt. We'll show them what defiance looks like." At that, the alarms blared, an unmistakable tone of inbound fighters. The viewport raced with glints of laser fire. As Council interceptors locked onto the Vigilance hull, Lyra's hand snapped to the tactical console. "Red alert, shields to full, launch countermeasures." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos, torsos bent over consoles, calm channels crackling, engines screaming to life. Behind her, the stars blurred into trails of color as the astra-vigilant dove toward the swarm. As ghostly tracer points winked and converged, Lyra Voss drew a steady breath. Her voice cut clear across the pandemonium. "All hands, stand firm. The Council gave us an ultimatum. They've chosen their path. Now we choose ours." And with that, the first shots of the coming war tore through the void, but in every heart aboard the Vigilant, defiance burned brighter than any weapon. The Council had underestimated them. Let them come. They would be met with the full force of a people who refused to bow. Ambassadrix Celine Auris hovered at the edge of the Grand Concourse. where polished obsidian floors reflected the twin pillars of light, streaming from the vaulted ceiling. Celestaris Prime's capital was a monument to the Council's grandeur. Marble colonnaded halls, crystal hollow looms projecting interstellar treaties past and present, and galleries displaying relics from the First Unification War. But today, its beauty felt brittle like a stained glass window on the brink of shattering. Celine's silver robes rustled as she swept through a throng of aides and petitioners. Every glance she caught carried a mixture of hope and fear. Envoys from fringe worlds lingered in murmuring knots, their faces pale with anxiety over the ultimatum. They believed in the Council's oath to protect the innocent, yet the very institution, meant to safeguard them, now brandished extinction as a bargaining chip. She paused before the Hall of Orders, its doors embossed with the sigils of the Triarchon. Behind those doors, 3 of the galaxy's most powerful leaders schemed in secret, chambers far removed from the public's gaze. Celine drew a steadying breath and activated her private comlink. "Thorn, status report," she whispered. A soft chime answered. Intelligence Officer Herrick Thorn's voice crackled in her earpiece, muted by layers of encryption. "Ambassadrix, I've confirmed microtransactions linking the Council's Special Contracts Division to Black Sun's orbital yards on Vega 4. Shipment manifests list prohibited bioreactors and quantum phase torpedoes scheduled for delivery." 24 hours ago, Celine's heart pounded. She stepped into a hidden alcove and pressed her back against the cold stone. "And the Archon's signatures, faked," Thorn replied. "They used high-level crypto keys, stolen from the Council archives 3 cycles back. Only the Archons have access to those. Whoever orchestrated this wants to leverage war, not peace." Celine closed her eyes. The Council's official story was unraveling like frayed nanofiber. If the Archons had erected this ultimatum to provoke the free colonies into resistance, and then profit from arming both sides, at Black Sun's expense, they had betrayed everything the Council professed to stand for. She keyed. Her transponder, secure channel to the Astrovigilant. No Council sensors could trace it. Celine gives Captain Voss. "Captain, I have proof the Triarchon are complicit with Black Sun. I'm arranging a data drop at the outer docking ring. Meet me there in 2 hours. Bring trusted allies." Her palms were slick with tension. She couldn't afford to hesitate. The Council's clandestine alliance with Black Sun was a cancer that would metastasize across the galaxy unless cut out and fast. 2 hours later, under the flickering neon of Celestaris Prime's forgotten docking ring, Celine awaited the arrival of the Vigilance envoy. The air was thick with sulfur and ozone from nearby refueling columns, and stray maintenance droids scuttled between hulking freighters. She hovered in the shadow of an abandoned tanker, cloak drawn tight across her shoulders, holopouch strapped. At her hip, the Gravjet's abrasion plating skidded to a halt, and a trio of figures disgorged: Commander Tariq Hawk El-Amin, Lieutenant Commander Santi Malikov, and former Council Lieutenant Marek Sal, recent defector, and one of Celine's only confidants inside the high chamber. Hawk's face, usually impassive, was etched with urgency. Malikov's eyes darted constantly to the dark corners of the ring, searching for tailing Council agents. Sol's uniform hung awkwardly on his lean frame, the badge of office he once wore now swapped for the colors of rebellion. "Ambassadrix," Hawk greeted, voice low. "Time is short." Celine offered a stiff nod. "Right. Thorn has uploaded the manifest files to this data rod." She pressed the slim device into Sol's hand. "It contains logs of every sanctioned Black Sun contract and the falsified encryption keys. Also schematics for those bioreactors. If the Vigilance Calm Rays can beam this to every colonial fleet and Council world, they'll know precisely who ignited this crisis." Marek slipped the rod into his jacket. "We can mirror burst it through the Astra's subspace relay, but we must avoid any Council jammers deployed around the station." Malikov tapped his datapad. "There's a maintenance conduit unused, unmonitored, that leads to the primary relay tower. We can insert the data there." Hawk scanned the perimeter. "And the Archons? They'll realize it's us soon enough." Celine's jaw tightened. "Which means we have maybe an hour before they scramble security or call in Black Sun's private enforcers. Every second counts above them." The city's monorail thundered past its neon glow, illuminating the battered tanker. In cold pink light, Celine clenched her fingers. The council she once swore to uphold was crumbling from within. If she failed, the galaxy would plunge into a war of mercenaries and profiteers, and the free colonies would be the first to bleed. "Then let's move," she said. Back on the Astrovigilant, Lyra Voss consulted her war room's holomaps. Red markers traced the projected pathways of Council interdiction squadrons. Small yellow nodes indicated potential black sun combeacons known to jam subspace channels. She and Hawk had spent the last hour debating strategy: show force or strike at the Council's information lifeline. Both options bore immense risk. A flicker on her console signaled an incoming secure transmission from Celine, encrypted with a level of complexity only the Ambassadrix and the Archons possessed. Lyra held her breath as the file unpacked itself, a detailed ledger of clandestine transfers, bioweapon test data, memos signed by Archon Solarius Malkin and countersigned by Archon Hein Vallis. She looked up at Hawk. "They've gone further than we feared." Hawk's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just a trap, it's deliberate provocation. They'll stoke skirmishes at the fringes, claim the colonies attacked first, then justify deploying Black Sun's arsenal to restore order." Lyra's knuckles whitened on the console. "And the Council's fleets, they'll be complicit. Only until they know the truth," Malikov interjected, stepping forward. "Once we broadcast Celine's files, every Council-affiliated world will see the forgery. The Archons will be exposed before they can react." Lyra nodded slowly. "All right. Phase 1, secure the data drop point. Phase 2, broadcast. Phase 3, force the High Chamber into public scrutiny. Or collapse." Muriel Hanford's gruff voice cut in over the comm. "Engineering prep the grav jets. They'll fly dark until they reach the relay tower. We've also got an EMP pulse drone ready to fry any jammer nodes at the tower's base." Lyra took a deep breath. "Good. Signal the colonies to cover our insertion time slot. Oda 17 local. Hawk, you lead. Malikov, you're on comms encryption. Sol, you're our ticket inside the station's internal grid. Guide the drone to the tower. We succeed here, we buy time to rally the galaxy." Stars danced on the viewport as the Vigilant maneuvered into the station's blind spot. Lyra's heart pounded. She remembered the oath she took as a cadet: to protect life, uphold justice, maintain unity. Now the institution she once served threatened to betray everything she believed in. "Let history remember," she whispered to herself, "that when the Council doubted us, we stood together." As the grav jets released from the hangar with barely a whisper, Lyra tapped her comm panel. "Vanguard command to Section Beta, move out, and may the stars guide our cause." In the dim glow of the station's underbelly, the wheels of revolution began to turn, and nowhere was the threat of betrayal thicker than in the heart of the Council itself. The Astrovigilant drifted through the Stygian stretch between Lyra's home system and Celastaris Prime, her portside engines humming with barely contained power. Even at warp's edge, the sheer scale of the vessel was awe-inspiring. 2 kilometers of reinforced alloy hull, sinewy pylons arching toward twin quantum cores, and an array of sensor dishes like the shimmering petals of a metallic flower. Yet it was the bridge that felt alive, a living organism of men and women huddled around holoprojectors, each heartbeat amplified by the knowledge that the fate of billions hung in the balance. Lyra Voss stood at the command console, her fingers dancing across translucent controls that shifted with the faintest pressure. A cascade of incoming transmissions flooded the display: tactical updates, encrypted status reports from colony governors, even desperate pleas from civilian freighters, begging for safe passage. None of it mattered. All eyes were fixed on the Council's ultimatum. For hours earlier, the Vigilant had received the single, unyielding message: Galactic Council High Chamber 2. Free colonies combined fleet surrender all non-standard armaments and classified defensive technologies within 24 standard hours. Failure to comply will result in overwhelming force. No caveats, no negotiation, no hope. Lyra replayed the message in her mind as she turned to her first officer, Commander Tariq Hawk El Amin. Hawk was a veteran of the Purge Wars too. Decades ago, He'd commanded guerrilla raiding parties on the mineral world of Dawn's Fjord, fighting to keep colonists alive against devour hives. His lean frame and hawk-sharp gaze bespoke unyielding resolve, tempered by a lifetime of losses. Well, she said softly. Hawk's voice, when it came, was calm but carries an unmistakable edge. They know we can't comply. The Hyperion Matrix alone would take weeks to decommission safely. Without it, every colony along the outer ring is exposed. It's a trap, Captain. Lyra clenched her jaw. She could feel the Council's words pressing against her like a vice. Once allies, the High Chamber's demand now reeked of treachery. They had supplied the free colonies with the Matrix years ago, citing its success in repelling the Devourers. Now they wanted it back under threat of annihilation. Behind her, Lieutenant Ilamaro, the ship's communications officer, seized Lyra's attention, incoming from Admiral Sran. She announced, voice modulated to steel. The view screen rippled, resolving into the stern visage of Admiral Garrick Sran, his uniform bedecked with the gilded stars of a full admiral. Lines of age etched his face, but his eyes burned with the same fanatic intensity Lyra remembered from the academy. Unwavering loyalty to Council doctrine, Captain Voss, Sran began, his tone all formality. You are commanded to present the Astra Vigilant and her sister ships for disarmament procedures upon arrival at Saturn's ring station. Failure to comply will be considered an act of rebellion. A pause. The Council is prepared to enforce its will. He cut transmission abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. A single red dot marked Saturn's ring station on the holomap, an orbital platform bristling with missile turrets and railguns, the staging ground for the Council's so-called peacekeeping forces. Muriel Hanford, chief engineer and the soul of the ship's heart, slammed a gauntleted fist on the console. They've lost their minds, she growled. Sparks danced along her cybernetic arm. You want to talk rebellion, Admiral? Try calling it that while slicing the Republic in half. Lieutenant Commander Santi Malikov, head of intelligence, leaned forward. His fingers traced the arcs of the Matrix's energy signature on the display. It's more than just a trap, he said. Our sensors have detected unusual shipments docked at Black Sun Consortium yards. Bio-warheads, quantum destabilizers, things the Council officially banned 2 cycles ago. Lyra's pulse quickened. Black Sun was the consortium whispered about in hushed tones across backwater cantinas, rumored to traffic in doomsday weapons, feeding conflict wherever profits brewed. If Malikov's intel was correct, the Council might be in league with the very criminals they claim to police. Assume worst-case scenario, Lyra ordered. Sound general quarters. Prepare defensive barricades and ready the boarding parties. Notify all colony governors. If we don't report disarmament in 12 hours, consider us at war. Her words rang through the bridge, hard and unflinching. The crew snapped into motion, a choreographed ballet of duty and dread. At her side, Hawk keyed the comm. All ships, this is Vanguard Command. Disarm or engage. Our threshold is 12 hours. I repeat, 12 hours. Outside, the celestial panorama of stars and nebulae gave no hint of the storm brewing in political capitals. Yet the vacuum of space felt suddenly charged, as if the cosmos itself recoiled in anticipation of the coming reckoning. Lyra turned away from the view screen and strode to the strategy table. At the center of the bridge, holostar maps floated. Above its surface, plotting the boundary lines of Council space and the Free Colony's territories. Red symbols marked Council warships and defense platforms. Blue icons denoted Loyalist vessels under her command. All right, she said, voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. What assets can we muster within 20 hours? Muriel consulted the engineering feeds. We have to Nova class. Fighters and 6 grav jets out of repair. I can hot swap core components from the shuttle fleet, but it'll take us at least 6 hours to run diagnostics. Santi's brow furrowed. And we'll need to re-encrypt our sensor rays. We can't broadcast our movements if we hope to keep the grav jets cloaked. Hawk added, it's not just firepower. We'll need a diplomatic gambit, something to stall the Council while we buy time to mobilize the colonies. Lyra nodded, thinking of Celine Auris. The Council, the grav jets slipped through the station's maintenance conduit like shadows. their exterior plating humming with stealth modulators. Inside each cockpit, a single pilot lay prone in a custom harness, eyes locked on the heads-up display. Among them, Lieutenant Thalia Echo Renard fought to calm her racing heartbeat. She'd flown missions in the Devour Wars, but nothing had tested her nerves like this. Below them, the dark corridors of Docking Ring 47 writhed with power conduits and anti-intrusion sensors, any one of which could betray their presence in an instant. At the helm of the lead craft, Marek Sol guided the Gravjet's magnetic clamps toward a hidden hatch. Point Alpha, he whispered into the comm. We're 30 meters from the relay tower, initiating bypass override. Copy that, came Commander Hawk's voice from his own cockpit. Echo, you're on EMP charge. Prep the drone. Thalia's gloved fingers danced over her console as she armed a dart-sized EMP drone. In the jet's auxiliary bay, through the viewport, the ancient maintenance ducts rippled with the pale glow of emergency lighting bondsmen and late shift technicians long gone, leaving only the hiss of leaking coolant and the distant clank of a service bot. Below, Sandy Malikov supervised the transmission uplink. He carried the data rod Celine had entrusted to him, its encrypted core pulsing with dormant code that could fracture the Council's reputation. Across every system, from the Gravjet's aft hatch, he watched Sol's feed as the defected lieutenant crawled through the crawlspace toward the calm tower's base. Inside the tower vestibule, Sol felt the pulsations of the station's main reactor resonate through the floor plates. He disabled a motion sensor with a quick jolt of his multi-tool, then slithered through a narrow access shaft until he faced the central junction box. Sparks danced along the conduits as he grafted the data rod into the override port. The station's built-in security AI shuddered, then relented, an eerie hush settling over the corridor. Jammer nodes offline, Sol reported. You're clear, Echo. Thalia flicked a switch and the drone ejected. It clung to the ceiling, its ion thrusters invisible, before detonating a localized EMP blast. Security lights shuddered out in a wide radius, screens flickering into darkness. Reverse polarity sirens wailed somewhere far off, but the station's interior cameras went dark. The Gravjet's stealth modulators synchronized with the blackout, rendering them effectively invisible. Broadcast channel live in 3, 2, 1, Hawk intoned. From the Gravjet's dorsal antenna, a subspace pulse erupted, carrying Celine's damning evidence into every Council archive server and Colonial fleet array within range. Across the void, holoscreens everywhere flickered into Celine's stern visage, her silver robes shimmering even in transmission. Behind her, the ledger of forged contracts and black sun schematics scrolled in blazing red. People of the Council and free colonies, her voice echoed, resonant and unwavering. You have been lied to. Your leaders sold your safety for profit, and now they would see you destroyed to cover their treachery. On Celastaris Prime, in every chamber and cathedral, diplomats and soldiers froze mid-gesture. Screens in Siren High Court, the Aegis Barracks, and the Koltura Embassy all displayed the same revelation. The Triarchans' signatures on illicit weapon manifests had been faked, and at their hearts lay a conspiracy with the Black Sun Consortium. Moments later, Lyra Voss watched the unfolding chaos from the bridge of the Astra Vigilant. The tactical displays flickered as the broadcast rippled through the ship's secure network. Red dots marking Council warships across the system hesitated in their approach vectors. Energy signatures from orbital platforms dimmed as shield projectors toggled offline in confusion. They see it, Lyra whispered. They know. Hawk stepped beside her, fists clenched. The fleet just reported Section Gamma held fire and is requesting orders. Section Delta's interceptor squadrons are locking weapons idle. They're turning their hulls away from us, Lyra allowed, herself a small nod. Initiate Phase 2. Hail every Council vessel on open comm. Offer safe harbor for those who stand down and defect. Use Celine's testimony as cover and promise amnesty. Lieutenant Morrow's fingertips glowed as she sent the transmissions. Across each broadcast, Lyra's calm but resolute voice invited Council captains to choose the side of truth rather than blind obedience. Seconds stretched like hours, then one by one, Tactical chatter shifted from hostility to capitulation. On the streets of Celestaris Prime, envoys spilled from council halls into tumultuous corridors. Civilians poured into plazas, eyes riveted to public holoscreens, chattering in disbelief and rage. Security detachments lowered their energy rifles, shields opening like petals, surrendering to the dawn. Back in the calm tower's heart, Sol ejected the data rod, its work complete. The gravjet's reversed thrust, vanishing into the shadows of the station's underbelly. Sol exhaled, voice trembling as he keyed the button to seal the hatch behind him. Data drop confirmed. "Let's get out of here." Thalia's triumphant laughter crackled over the comm. "Never thought I'd be so happy to see a blackout." Across the system, the ripple of defiance became a wave. Zephyrus miners ceased their strike on council mining rigs and raised banners of the free colonies instead. Oriona scientists abandoned their research on bioweapons and flocked to the Vigilance Medical Bay, offering supplies and theories to heal, not harm. Outer Reach diplomats formed a human firewall around refugee transports, shielding them from council patrols still reeling from betrayal. Lyra stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the holomap as the galaxy's power balance recalibrated in real time. "So this is defiance," she murmured. "Not blind rage but unity in purpose. We stand for something beyond ourselves." Hawk's smile was brief but genuine. "They doubted us. They thought we'd crumble under intimidation. Instead, we've shown that truth can topple empires." But even in victory's glow, Lyra felt the weight of what was to come. The Council's fleets, though shaken, still bristled with weapons and loyalists. Black Sun mercenaries lurked in the fringe, ready to exploit any vacuum of power. The war was far from over. "Prepare for counterstrike," she ordered. "Reinforce defensive perimeters around the station. Send support shuttles to colony worlds on alert. And keep broadcasting Selene's evidence until every jurisdiction in Council space has seen it." As the gravjets slipped back aboard the Vigilant, Lyra allowed herself a moment to look upward through the viewport. A scattering of stars, once silent witnesses, now bore the flicker of war and rebellion. Somewhere beyond the edge of sensor range, new alliances were forming of ex-council officers, disenfranchised colonists, and even Black Sun defectors disgusted by their consortium's crimes. In their doubt, Lyra whispered, "We found our strength. In their betrayal, we forged our resolve." And as the Astrovigilant powered up for the next phase of the campaign, the galaxy held its breath, awakened at last to the rising tide of defiance that would sweep away the old order and carve a new path through the stars. The void trembled as the first volleys of the final confrontation lit up the darkness. Plasma lances arched from the battered hull of the Astrovigilant, cutting through the Council's flagship escort with searing precision. Explosions bloomed against the cold backdrop of space, metal fragments drifting away like wounded fireflies. Captain Lyra Voss stood on the bridge, every nerve alight with fierce resolve. Hyperion Matrix at full output. Muriel Hanford's voice crackled through the calm panel. "We're drawing down their shields on your mark." Lyra's hand hovered over the firing sequence across the tactical holomap. The Arium Pax, the Council's pride and bulwark, glowed like a golden cathedral. Its orbital platforms trembled under the assault. Fighter screens flickered as interceptors were torn apart by the Vigilance escorts. Yet the Pax held, its shields humming with Arcadian-grade energy. "Mark," Lyra commanded. A beam of quantum-tuned energy erupted from the Vigilance forward cannon. It sliced through the Pax's outer field in a wound of violet white, then punched through the inner layer. The flagship shuddered, systems failing in a cascade of alarms. Moments later, the Pax's core reactor detonated in a silent nova, sending shockwaves through the Council fleet and ripping a crater of debris across the battle grid. Direct hit, shields collapsing universally. Muriel cheered. The effect was immediate. Council cruisers that had dared to hold formation now wavered, their captains ordering full retreat or surrender. Hundreds of fighters lowered landing gear and spun away. From the front lines, Lyra allowed herself a brief, breathless smile. "All ships, cease fire. Hail the Council command net. Offer terms of capitulation on Celestaris Prime." The streets roared with the sound of revolt. Orbital bombardment had forced thousands of civilians into shelters, and for the first time in galactic memory, Council-approved security forces found themselves beseeched for protection, rather than dispensing it. In the Grand Concourse, Ambassador Celine Auras stood on a makeshift dais, holoscreens behind her broadcasting Lyra's victory and the words of the Free Colonies Pledge. To all who stand for justice, peace, and transparency, we extend our hand. Lay down your arms. Join us in forging a new council, one bound not by profit or deceit, but by the welfare of every world. Her voice rang out across the throng, steady and unwavering. Beside her, former Lieutenant Marek Sol and Intelligence Officer Sandy Malikov coordinated with local governors, organizing relief for war-torn districts and collecting documentation for the tribunal that would FOL low. In the streets below, uniformed soldiers, once enforcers of the Archon's will, shepherded panicked families toward safe zones. They carried faded banners of the free colonies under their arms, signs of a shifting allegiance that rose faster than any coup. Children waved improvised flags, and street vendors, long silenced by martial decrees, once again hawked spiced ration buns and data crystals of rebel broadcasts. High above, in the burnt-out remains of the Council's flotilla, a flotilla of captured vessels drifted in silent formation behind the Vigilant. Lyra's boarding teams flitted from ship to ship, securing archives and liberating prisoners of conscience. Commander Hawk led one such team onto the Pax's bridge, where the three Archons, Solarius Malkin, Hein Valis, and Daros Etrin were found huddled behind a shattered command dais, their gold-trimmed robes stained and torn. Hawk cuffed them in turn. You're under arrest for high treason, conspiracy with a criminal syndicate, and endangering the lives of billions. His voice was cold as obsidian. Solarius Malkin's mask of arrogance had given way to panic. You have no authority. You helped forge a death sentence for every colony under your jurisdiction, Lyra interrupted, stepping onto the bridge with Muriel and Santi in tow. With Black Sun's weapons and your falsified mandates, you plan genocide for profit. No court in the galaxy will spare you. Valis and Etrin exchanged haunted glances, their eyes reflecting the ghostly glow of the Vigilance lights. As they were led away, the remaining council officers aboard the Pax rose in salute to Lyra, a gesture of respect, not obedience. Down in the council archives, Santi hacked the containment protocols on the Black Sun test data. With deft keystrokes, he unleashed every grain of evidence into the public domain: research on bioreactors, records of forced labor in the Vega yards, and price ledgers listing the cost per civilization for both destruction and reconstruction. Across every Holonet channel, the truth blazed like a supernova. Back on the Vigilant, Muriel synthesized these streams into a unified data beam, broadcasting to every system. Captain, she announced, even the farthest mining outposts are receiving. Lyra exhaled, tension finally leaving her shoulders. Good. Let the galaxy see what we've uncovered. In the heart of Celestaris Prime's High Court, a provisional assembly convened. Selected envoys from the free colonies, disgraced council deputies, and moderate senators formed the interim Senate. Celine presided, her silver robes now marked with the crest of a new era, an open starburst, symbolizing transparency and hope. Lyra and Hawk attended the inaugural session via hololink from the Vigilant. In a solemn proclamation, Celine declared, the dissolution of the old Triarchan structure, effective immediately. The Galactic Council is placed under provisional governance. A tribunal will be formed to try those responsible for this betrayal. No world or faction is excluded from representation, so long as they pledge their loyalty to justice, not tyranny. Voices erupted in applause and cheers in the corridors. Outside, reporters churned through live feeds, sending the announcement to every news spire and data satellite. But Retribution was not yet complete. In the hidden vaults beneath the Grand Arsenal, Black Sun's mercenaries caught in the open sought to sabotage the peace process. A detachment of colonial marines, led by Captain Ronnie Voigt of Oriona, stormed the armory's reinforced doors. They faced augmented soldiers armed with experimental weapons, but the marines' discipline and courage prevailed. Voigt personally apprehended Black Sun's local commander, a hulking ex-soldier named Corvax Thane, and delivered him into custody. As dawn broke over Celastaris Prime, smoke still curled from the battered spires of the arsenal, but volunteers from the Free Colony's engineers, diplomats, and even former council bureaucrats streamed into the city to rebuild what had been shattered. Under Celine's guidance, food rations and medical supplies were distributed, and survivors sheltered in repurposed council chambers. By the time the twin suns set on that day of reckoning, the galaxy's power balance had irrevocably shifted. The combined fleets of the Free Colonies, once fragmented and on the defensive, now formed the backbone of a new defense pact, pledged to protect any world threatened by tyranny. The Black Sun Consortium's assets were frozen, their leaders torn from hidden sanctuaries and paraded before the tribunal for crimes against sentient life. On the Astra Vigilant, Lyra surveyed the bridge in quiet pride. The deck plates bore scorch marks and dents, but every crew member moved with a sense of purpose reborn. Hawk stood beside her, elbow resting on a console. Muriel tuned the matrix reactors for repatriation shipments rather than weapons manufacturing. Santi monitored the flow of reconstruction data to dozens of afflicted systems. Lyra tapped a sequence into the command terminal, broadcasting a final message to every listening channel. Today, we delivered Retribution. Tomorrow, we build a future. Let no one forget that unity forged in truth will always triumph over deceit. As the message faded, Lyra allowed herself a moment to look out at the stars beyond the viewport. They shone with the promise of new beginnings, of worlds reconnecting, old wounds healing, and a council reborn in the crucible of justice. In that silent vigil, she understood at last what Celine had warned her. The true test of victory was not in defeat of one's enemies, but in the forging of lasting peace. And so, with the echoes of battle receding, Captain Lyra Voss and her allies set their course toward a brighter horizon, one defined not by ultimatums or hidden traps, but by the shared conviction that, together, they could deliver hope to every corner of the galaxy.